Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the last session of the day. Woo-hoo! Very good. Congratulations on making it this far. Congratulations on still being with us right till the end. Don't forget, once you're dismissed, this isn't over. This goes on well into the night, at least till 7:30 around the corner, and then beyond, where the drink service is provided. It gives you a chance to digest, to ruminate, to masticate all the ideas that you've been hearing throughout the day. Right, so our very next speaker can be a controversial speaker at times. He can be a controversial personality. He is, in fact, South Africa's one of the most prominent personalities for both TV and radio in South Africa. He's got almost 1 million Twitter followers. He was very clear to correct me, it's almost 1 million. And on his way out, he tweeted not only that he's coming to London TEDx, that he's also going to be naming Will and Kate's new baby, and that he's going to be having a word with Boris. Just ruffling him up just a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, our very next speaker, Gareth Cliff.
Freedom of expression. Why is it important? Why is access to freedom of expression so important? As a broadcaster in South Africa, and as an African, freedom of expression is a fundamental human right. It's so important to us that it underpins all the other rights. If you can't say what you think, you can't express yourself freely. If you can't do what you say, and if you can't find out what you need to know, you must argue that you're not really in a healthy society. Even more important than that, are you able to hold truth up to power? Are you able to challenge authority? Well, Africa doesn't have the greatest history when it comes to freedom of expression. It's actually one of the things that we're not very proud of. There's been suppression of freedom of expression, both pre- and post-colonialism in Africa. People have struggled, ordinary people, to be able to voice their position, their point of view in society, even when it was about things that affected them directly. And people were unable, at the same time, to derive the information that they needed in order to change their own circumstances for the better. But things are changing. Do you know what those things are? They're called vuvuzelas. They are most famous, probably to everybody in this audience, because they were the loudest, noisiest things at the Football World Cup in 2010. They were so loud and noisy and controversial that they were almost banned at least a few times. The reason they're loud and noisy is because they come from a traditional instrument, which we use in Africa and has been used for decades, centuries. Loud animal horns, kudu horns, that were blown to summon community meetings. So they would call all the villagers together, and they would get everyone into one place so that there could be a meeting, an indaba. Now, they're mostly used for fun at football matches because they've been supplanted, they've been replaced by these. These are now the means of summoning the community meetings. The iPad didn't exist in Africa 5 years ago. There wasn't one. Now they're being used all over the continent to educate children. Here you can see some kids learning at iSchool Africa in rural KwaZulu-Natal with an iPad that gives them access to information they would never have had before. A library that you couldn't fit into any room, no matter how big it was. And this is happening everywhere. Africa, however, when you think about it, you're probably thinking of words like poverty, famine, war, corruption, disease. I have friends in America who say things to me like, do you have lions walking down the street, grabbing babies out of their cribs with their mouths and devouring them in front of their parents? And I tell them, no, you won't get eaten, but we do have our share of challenges. And some of them are quite serious, but it's all changing. And in some ways, it's changing faster than you would expect. We're ahead of the curve in some ways. I'll tell you how in a moment. The true democratization of the media world is taking place in Africa. While those meetings that I was talking about just a moment ago that used to be summoned by animal horn were called into a common area, people would gather like in a village marketplace or whatever. Today, the same is happening, but it's happening on the internet. on Twitter. You have these vociferous groups of people who are telling you what they think of the government. They're telling you what they think of each other. They're arguing. They're inciting revolting language against each other some of the time, but it's very viable. It's alive. It's tremendous. It's extraordinarily exciting. And that village marketplace, that common area that we used to meet in, whether it was a village or a town or anything else, is now the largest and most diverse common area that has ever existed. Since we're at the Royal Geographical Society, it probably behooves me to speak like David Attenborough and say, it is the largest, most diverse common area that has ever existed. My point is, anyone, anywhere with something to say can now say it to anyone who has access to the internet. This is the new voice of Africa. These platforms, these new digital means of communicating, allow ordinary people to share their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, the things they really care about, their stories. And it's already happening before our very eyes. I'll give you an example of it in a second. What's going on here in Africa is so fundamental because it's something that maybe people in the first world haven't necessarily experienced the same way. There is an Ericsson mobility report that came out just last year. 650 million mobile subscriptions have been taken out in sub-Saharan Africa to date, and that was only a few months ago. They project that that number will grow to an astonishing just short of 1 billion, 960-odd million mobile subscriptions in sub-Saharan Africa alone. Now, you know, if you're interested in business, that this represents for you a potential marketplace second to none. We should all be watching Africa. It wasn't always this way. I'll be frank with you. Where I'm from, censorship used to be the name of the game. In fact, there were only two options for you if you really wanted to know what was going on. The first option was that you could listen to the state broadcaster, watch the state broadcaster, and you would get monolithic, dull, stultifying information that didn't really help you very much. Usually it was just propaganda that was churned out. It's one of the reasons that the apartheid government in South Africa lasted as long as it did. It kept everyone in the dark, black and white. That's not an option. The other option we had was international news networks, CNN, BBC, all very credible, all very good at what they do, but they were telling our stories. So it felt bizarre. Now, any old gogo or grandmother in a rural village, any young entrepreneur who's trying to change the world in a city, all these people at the touch of a button can share their stories with all of us. You can go straight to the source. Everyone in Africa is now a broadcaster. Using social media, using this mushrooming profusion of new original content sources for stories and for everything else, has provided people with an entirely new way of viewing the world. Why it's exciting and why it matters, and I'll give you an example now of one of the best ways that this is coming to fruition, is because this is where ordinary people take control of both the sources and the audience participation in every medium. So let me give you an example quickly. This man, do you know who he is? His name is Robert Gabriel Mugabe. He's the president of Zimbabwe. He has been the president for 35 years. He is now 91 years old. It just shows you, 91, don't count them out. 91 years old. He is a controversial man. He gets a lot of attention. He loves to give the West the middle finger whenever he can, especially at the United Nations, which is pretty much the only place he can travel anymore. But Robert Gabriel Mugabe got back from Ethiopia just a short while ago, and he's controversial at the moment for this reason I'm about to tell you. And walking out of Harare Airport down the red carpet, he stumbled and fell in a very awkward position on the stairs. And it went wild on the internet. Let me show you what happened. That's him falling. All the bodyguards you see around him have been fired subsequently. But I suppose in Zim that's better than losing your life. Now, It's gone viral. Everybody has been reposting, changing, posting their own versions, photoshopping their own pictures. Take a look at these. This is one of the first ones from The Independent. BBC trending. There he is, surfing a wave, running at the Olympics, doing Strictly Come Dancing. And you can see the internet reaction, hashtag Mugabe falls. Newsday, on a horseback. Mugabe trends on Twitter across Africa, and you can see Namibia, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tunisia. Just under that, dictatorships cannot stay ahead of technology. They show the picture of him falling, what his red carpet tumble means. Internet collectively laughing at Robert Mugabe falling over. That's a bit mean. But here's ZANU-PF, his own party. I don't know that this is really ZANU-PF, but let's imagine it is. Comrade Mugabe never fell. Don't believe Photoshop pictures. He is a man of incredible balance. Here are just one or two more to show you just how wide and far these images spread. An unwitting internet sensation, Mugabe falls. Why am I showing you these pictures? I'm not showing you these pictures to make fun of an old man. Some may hold him in high esteem. Some may feel that it's appropriate to ridicule him. I'm showing you these pictures because I can. 2-3 years ago, you would have been locked up in jail for having material like this on your phone. I'm not exaggerating. That's how much it's changed. This is the kind of freedom of expression that cannot be suppressed. Now, I'm sure that there are people here who think that all of this is good and well, and there's a lot of humor, and there's fun to be had, but will it bring about real change? Well, I'll tell you in a second how it has brought about real change. I feel that what we've done here is suddenly people have empowered themselves. They're able to discuss and debate important political things, just like dinner conversation. And if you're good enough at it and you attract a large enough audience, your dinner conversation can become a very public meeting. Essentially, we've all seen the results of things like the Arab Spring, where real revolution has come about because of the internet. And in Africa, more than anywhere else, this is important because to you, in the first world, this is just an extension of what you've been doing on laptops and desktops for a long, long time. We've leapfrogged past that. We're on these, and for us, these represent empowerment. Though the Arab Spring has been controversial, though there is a lot going on in Africa that is still of concern, these kinds of things give people hope. And ordinary people are able to do this. Look at South Africa, for example. We have a population of 54 million odd people. Odd people, because we're not all normal. And there are 79.1 million mobile subscriptions in just South Africa. That's 1.5 mobile subscriptions per person. And they project that that will grow even more in the future. Less people, more data, more phones, more communication, more conversation, more freedom. In Nigeria, which is the most populous African country of all, these are the figures for growth in the number of internet users, in the number of mobile subscriptions, and the number of social media accounts. And you can see that they're all in the 20s, and that's just in a year. So you can imagine in a country with that kind of population what this means for business, for freedom of expression. This is an interesting pie chart from the Tommy Ahonen report. It's the last bit of statistical data I'll give you. But it's important to me because if you look at the slice of the pie that Africa has, it's the orange part. Africa's 9%. In 2018, these are the projections. That's more than in North America. More smartphones in Africa by 2019 than in North America. I think you can understand why that's significant. So, people are already using the internet to download the content they care about, whether it's movies or it's music or it's the TV series that they like that HBO tried to stop us from seeing before it was on the internet. Even they can't keep freedom of expression, albeit illegal in this case, from happening. The important thing is that all other content is bound to follow. It's just a matter of time. So, why does it matter to us? Because that's the fun stuff, downloading music, listening to the things we care about, podcasts. It matters to us because freedom of speech isn't free. There are many important, great men and women who've come before us, who've paid the ultimate price for us to be able to converse like we are now, equally, one-to-one, as individuals, in a free society, across continents. Africa is still very vulnerable to religious intolerance and militant religion, to war, ethnic violence, tribal violence, racism. All of this is still very real and it's still going on. But for the first time, we now have an ability to take control of our own destiny. Everybody, not just the powerful. By 2020, Africa will be one of the youngest, most active, unsaturated consumer markets in the world. The internet has forever changed how we communicate and engage with each other. And at the touch of a button, anyone can upload a video to YouTube, tweet eyewitness news as it happens from anywhere, share information, pictures on Instagram, invitations on Facebook, all of that stuff. It comes with enormous positive implications. There are some negatives. I'm sure there are people in this room who've had their fair share of tours. Yes? No? Anyone had a tour? I have. Lots. Almost weekly. But the most important thing about all of this is that this freedom of expression is Africa's new voice. We invite you to join the conversation, to be bold, to be brave, to speak freely. Africa is only one click away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So just very quickly for anyone in the audience, what's a tour?
A tour is a war on Twitter. This is the new place for protests in Africa. The tour.
We learn something every moment in TEDx. I've heard that you can be a controversial figure in South Africa. Two questions for you. One is, how do you go about doing that? Do you wake up thinking, I'm going to be controversial?
No.
Are you saying what you're thinking and there's something to do with freedom of expression?
I actively wake up in the morning trying not to have any arguments or fights with people through the course of the day. It's just inevitable.
Okay.
Most days. I'm so happy. I often remark that this is the best time to be alive because I could never do what I do at any other time. It wasn't possible for people, especially someone when I started in radio at 20, to be able to say the things that I was saying. I would have been locked up years ago in any country, not just in my own. But there are so many things going on, particularly in Africa, in South Africa, that deserve comment and that deserve truth. And I'm glad to say that it isn't just me. There are multitudes of people who have millions of followers and are starting to make changes.
But you are walking a fine line, right? You are kind of getting into...
I wrote a letter to the president about 5 years ago. It keeps resurfacing, and that went viral. And I pretty much told him why I thought he was rubbish at his job. And some people liked it, some people didn't, but overwhelmingly, it keeps coming back. And again, the power of the internet is that it could have been anyone who wrote it. It didn't have to have been me. But these kinds of things, if they resonate with people, then people will spread them around. And it means that you have a constituency. You don't have to be a politician. You can wield influence just by being honest, not being boring, and making sure that you don't try to spin things or mislead people. There isn't room for that on the internet anymore. It's got to be authentic.
Okay. So, and you've got a whole program kind of dedicated to making this be more democratized.
We've got a whole channel. I launched a business last year where we're creating a platform for everybody who has something to say and who can command an audience to come on and start doing their own stuff. I call it user-generated content stroke. There are a bunch of different terms that I'm using at the moment, but I say that it's a place where everybody can be a broadcaster. And we have amateurs, we have professionals, we have funny people, we have very serious people, we have art, history, medicine, music, health, love, all these kinds of things. And it's tremendous. It's taken off really well. We've had close on 3.5 million downloads of individual pieces of content in under a year. So I'm very proud of that. And it's brand new, so we started at 0.
Okay, one last question. Was it a blue dress or was it a white and gold dress?
Well, there's so many of these memes. I think South Africa has actually contributed 1 or 2 more than we're punching above our weight in terms of causing noise and nonsense on the internet. I'm sure everyone watched the Oscar Pistorius trial, and I'm sure that if you did for just 5 seconds, you would have seen that even the advocates and advocates or barristers in this country are not always the most entertaining people. They tend to be steeped in law, and many of them, when they have lots and lots of practice, are a little theatrical, but they're certainly not entertainers. These two weren't either in this trial, but they became overnight sensations, and suddenly there were pictures of them being bandied about on the internet, and Barry Rue going, "I put it to you," which became quite a big thing.
Okay. Appreciate it, Gareth. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you
Gareth
very
Cliff,
much.
everyone.
Cool.
Cheers.